And that's one of the oldest quotes in real estate, right? Like you make money when you buy an asset, and that doesn't change. And especially now that we're getting into an uncertain territory when it comes to like economy and so on and so forth, going back to the fundamentals is the most important thing that I keep telling people all the time.
What's up, everybody? My name's Mike Sjogren, here with my co-host
Emanuele Pani.
We're part of a group of specialized real estate investors you've probably never heard of.
We didn't start with deep pockets or wealthy families, and we don't rely on 401ks, mutual funds, or traditional real estate investing.
In fact, many of us don't even own the properties that fund our freedom. If you ask the money experts out there, they'd say what we do is impossible, yet it's happening every single day.
It's happening through a new niche called short-term rentals.
We are Short-Term Rental Nation, and these are our secrets. What's going on, STR Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Short-Term Rental Secrets podcast. I am your host, Mike Sjogren, here with my main man and brother from another mother, Mr. Emanuele Pani. What's up, E?
My brother, so good to see you. I am dealing with the window project at the villas right now, so it's been an interesting week.
Again, how many windows is that? Do you know offhand?
160 regular windows. Ooh. And then 80 sliders. So it's an
What's the average cost per window and slider, out of curiosity, just because I was looking at that on a deal down here?
So I paid for the entire project, it's $580,000.
580 by what was it, 160 or something?
So 160 windows plus 80, so it's technically, you're looking at roughly, I think that per building, they're about like $58,000 per building. So
and that's 4 units per building.
There's 4 units per building. Yeah. So each building has 16 windows and then has 8.
So it's around like 14 grand-ish.
Yeah.
Roughly. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Quite a bit. And what's very interesting, it's having to kind of time it, because obviously like the units that have guests, we have certain expectations for them versus the units that are currently empty.
Yeah.
And so setting expectations to the guests, again, like I think it's super important when you know that you're going to have an issue to address it early on. So all of our listings have had the description in there that from this time to this time, there's a chance that we're going to be going through renovations. Just book, be aware if you're going to book ahead of time, right? People are still going to be upset, right? But it's the over communicating. So like we set a schedule. We text the schedule earlier, like, hey, we won't be here when the schedule is. It's like, yeah, that's fine. Just for you guys to know. Because just in case something happens, we're delayed or anything happens, people know. And then I requested for the window company to give me an update every day so that before 10 leaves for the day, we have the mass text to the specific building. So the next building can be notified before the day is over. And just over communicating when you're doing a big project or when you're doing any kind of renovation. Obviously, like hopefully you're not doing off the bat this number of units all at the same time. But whatever your renovation is, whatever projects you're doing, or even if you're just kind of going through fixing an issue, just over communicate. Hey, the guy is coming. Hey, the guy's on his way. Hey, the guy is 5 minutes away, because no guest is going to not appreciate that.
And they're going to be really pissed if you don't tell them. And I think people get nervous to say that because they're like, yeah, but then I might not get booked or they might want to cancel. It's honestly better to over communicate. And even if they decide to cancel, like you'll probably fill it anyway. But if you don't tell them and they show up and there's construction noise all over the place, they're going to be pissed.
Yeah. And if you're booking through an OTA, especially Airbnb, you're going to open up yourself to just a bad review, refunds, and Airbnb was very interesting. Is one of the guests did complain, and we told the Airbnb is like, it's in there, and Airbnb can see when you altered your listing and they can see when you added it. And so the rep was like, oh yeah, when he booked, that was already in there. It was just like, whew.
Yeah,
because like, you know what I'm saying? So it's definitely worth it. Nonetheless, super stressful, right? And just kind of orchestrating this whole thing. But they look beautiful already. So
yeah. And it's one of those things that's part of real estate investing, right? You've owned these things for a while now,
Yeah.
and you got to maintain them, right? And it's not always the sexy stuff. Like you did the roofs, now you got to do the windows, but then you're good for another 15 to 30 years or whatever. So
Yeah.
it's
I'm
just one of
hoping
those
to not
things
have
that,
to test them.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Cool, man. Yeah. I'm still down in Florida. I have never come down to this house and actually flew home on the day that I was supposed to fly home. I was just joking about that the other day. I'm like, we've been down like probably 5 or 6 times, and I've never flown down on time ever.
Things always happen. Like things always seem to happen.
Yep.
For sure.
So,
But it's good.
but yeah, I'm
Yeah.
feeling good. I'm officially out of quarantine today. So I went and looked at a house. And I'm hoping my man Shane's gonna get back to me so I can look at one more before I fly home tomorrow. And hopefully,
When we went on air, guys, like when so Mike, I'm like, what you doing? It's like, I think I'm just starting to buy a house today. I'm like, what do you mean today? It's like, yeah, today. I'm like, okay, well,
yeah.
let's get this show going.
So
Yeah, we ain't got a long time.
yeah. So things are good, man. And then we got Miami coming up in a couple weeks. So I'm gonna fly home
excited.
tomorrow, and then in a week I'm gonna hop back on a plane and fly down to Miami and hang out with you and 100 other amazing people for a few days and have a kick-ass time. And I'm excited, man. I'm gonna be doing a talk on boutique hotels at this one.
Oh, nice.
I was talking to Bill about it, and he was like, "Yeah, man, we keep getting a lot of questions." So I
Yeah, we
got my
should.
presentation dialed in on it and just doing kind of a compare and contrast of like, what are the differences? Like, what do you need to think about when you're going to go take down a 10, 20, 40 unit complex versus just a single family home?
Yeah,
Um, and so it'll be good. I know people will get a lot of value out of it. I did a similar presentation in Breckenridge last month, and they loved it. So it'll be good, man. I'm excited.
yeah, I'm really
So
looking forward to it. And I think honestly, it's just understanding how to look at assets. It's such an important skill, and it gets kind of sharpened over time. I told you that I went to look at this halfway house that it's close to the beach, so I really liked it location wise. The unit mix wasn't my favorite, but then kind of starting to go through it, and I remember like when I first started looking at properties, like 10 years ago, I didn't know what I didn't know, so I didn't even know what to look at, right? And now it's funny to like witness myself walking through a property, all of the little things that I noticed, right? So I'm like, I walk into bathrooms and like this place had no fans. So everything was rusted, right? It went through a full reno 2 or 3 years ago before this halfway house kind of like rented it. Everything is rusted. There is no coverings between the shower and the wall. So all the wall has moisture on it, right? And all the paint is peeling, right? So there are all those little things that you start noticing and you like, it's gonna be a problem, right? And
yeah,
so it's very interesting. Well, I'm
yep,
excited. I'm excited for Miami. I'm excited for your talk. I'm just excited to be around
yeah.
kind of like a sharp group of people. You know, I always get super fired up.
And I guess the venue's sick. So Bill was down there this past week. Bill Faith, my partner on the STR Wealth Conference events, he hosted his mastermind event there this week. And people were texting me. Julie was texting me, and some other people that were speaking. They were like, "Dude, this venue's awesome." So it's right on South Beach. Real cool venue. So excited to get down there. But today, what we thought would be a fun episode, and I did a little bit of this on Instagram last week, but if E and I were starting from ground zero today, how would we build our businesses now? Right. And I thought this would be a fun episode. So it's like if you're brand new and you're just getting rolling, this is exactly how we would launch our businesses today if we were starting from square one. Maybe we talk about it in two different buckets. Like for somebody that's looking to purchase their first property versus somebody that's looking to build up the management co-hosting business.
Yeah.
And we'll do it that way. So why don't we start for folks that have money first, and then we'll flip it to the co-hosting, and there'll be some similarities between the two. But if you were starting over right now, and let's say you had, I don't know, what's an even number that's reasonable? 100 grand, 200 grand.
Yeah. 100 grand. I think there's a difference also between like the people that are trying to hack it and the people that have the investment money, right? So
Yeah.
obviously, like what I mean by hacking it, right? The first thing that comes to mind, I would house hack it. Either do what are I'm zoning on the name. Sam, our friend Sam did. So like either rent out multiple rooms. Obviously, as vacation rentals, that's not as efficient, right? Like the single room rental. Even
Yep.
if you look at your like AirDNA data, it's not a super great like little niche market. But there is a lot of those like efficiencies, like houses with efficiencies in the back. And if I was like 22 or like 23, like had like my first job, had the credit to buy something, or even without credit, that's a whole different conversation. I would probably try to house hack it in buying like either like a duplex or like a multifamily properties. Technically, you can still get them under 4 units and under. You can still qualify with like an FHA loan. I would get something like that, or I would buy something that has maybe like an in-law suite in the back, and then
100%.
just kind of hop around between the houses.
I would absolutely do that. If I was going to start over right now, that is
Yeah.
exactly what I would do.
Yeah, especially if you're single or like you guys are a couple that like likes to hustle. Like I met a lot of people at the national conference that were like, yeah, like we're renovating this unit while we live in it. So if you're like kind of like on that bandwagon of like you don't mind living uncomfortably for a little while you create the life that you want, I would definitely say that would be my number one thing to do. Especially if I didn't have so much money.
100%. 100%. Then if you're, I don't know, kind of past that point, or maybe you don't want a house hack for whatever reason, and say you had 100 grand, I think that might be a little tight, but it depends on what kind of lending you can do. 100 grand
Yeah.
will go a long way if you can do a second home loan with 10% down. So I think the thing to keep in mind is, one, you need to know how to analyze the markets and analyze the deals. If you don't know how to do that yet, send me a DM on Instagram or go to my bio on Instagram, and I have a free starter pack. There's no cost, but there's a whole training in there on how to analyze markets on AirDNA, and I give you a deal analyzer, because knowing your numbers is everything, right? Like before we jumped on, E and I were talking about the deals that I'm looking at, and I'm like, okay, but if I have to invest this, this, and this, it's going to do this to my cash on cash. And like, I've already got it all in my spreadsheets and all this stuff. Like, you have to know your numbers before you buy.
Yeah.
But so many people DM me after the fact of like, hey, I'm in this deal. It's not making the money that I thought it was going to make. And I'm like, bro, I want to help you. This is what I would do. But like, you should have reached out before you bought the deal.
Yeah. And that's one of the oldest quotes in real estate, right? You don't buy, like you buy money, like you make money when you buy an asset. And that doesn't change. And especially now that we're getting into an uncertain territory when it comes to like economy and so on and so forth, going back to the fundamentals is the most important thing that I keep telling people all the time. And don't convince yourself. I think that's another thing that people do a lot, is they convince themselves that a deal works. You can convince yourself. Like either the deal works or the deal doesn't work.
Yeah.
And the number things are super easy. And it's also like there's a scarcity mindset behind trying to make every deal work and fall in love with the house. Like you want to tell me that you fell in love with the one house that you saw and that's the house that works, and there's going to be no other property in the history of properties that's going to work as well as this house? Come on, like get out of the way, right?
I told you last week before I got sick, I went and looked at a house and I loved the house. Like this guy just bought it a few months ago, flipped it. The house is sick. But when I ran the numbers, they don't pencil out. So there, as much as I want to buy the house selfishly, for me, it doesn't make sense financially. And I'm not a point yet. I'm still on my journey where, like, dude, I'm still in the wealth building phase. Maybe when I'm 50 and I'm, I've
and
got
just
stupid money, I
Yeah.
can afford to just splurge on something.
Yeah.
But you have to be disciplined, especially for the first 5-10 years, to build that wealth. And then you can screw around and do whatever, right? I did the Instagram video a couple weeks ago about the Beamer, the M4 that I bought, right? And it was like, I never bought sports cars because like it's not making me money. But then I bought a course that taught me how to buy a car and then how to flip it later and get all my money back. So I'm like driving a car for free for a summer. Like, okay, cool. I can afford to park some money in a car for 4 or 5 months. It's not going to bother me.
Yeah.
So it's just understanding that stuff.
Yeah. And then getting comfortable and like writing, like, if I was restarting over, I would also get so comfortable And that's what I feel super blessed in the journey that I had with the villas and with beginning as a maintenance guy. I would try to replicate that experience in some way, shape, or form. And what I mean by that is this, right? Like being a maintenance guy before gave me such an outlook of on the property that is very different, right? It's almost like if you work in a kitchen, having the back of the house mindset of like analyzing and seeing things. So what I was saying earlier about the property that I went to walk is that I noticed all of those things super quickly because that's my maintenance guy background, right? Like I have the nose for it. When I walk into a unit, I'm like, does it smell wet? Does it smell moldy? So it's really getting into that experience through learning or like learning through experience type of thing. I would try to find a way to do that, either like finding a mentor or joining a local real estate group or joining a local real estate office or something that gets your hands in understanding like also how to estimate cost, right? Like what Mike was saying, like how do you know how much a unit is going to cost you as you learn? So trying to understand that component to it as well. But don't start doing work yourself. Like you're not trying to buy a job.
Exactly. Exactly. And so kind of getting back to what we promised that we talk about, right? So if I had 100K and I was going to do a deal, I would be looking to try and put the least amount of money down. So if I had 100 grand, I'd be looking for a $500,000 house that I could put 50,000 down and then have another 40,000 bucks to furnish it the right way and design it and do whatever I need to do to maximize it. What I see a lot of people doing is they say, okay, I have 100 grand. If I get a 10% down deal, I can go buy this $7, $8, $900,000 house. And then they try and furnish it on 10, 15 grand. Like you can't. I'd rather have you have a healthier budget for design and making it really pop, because that's what's going to make you the most amount of money. The reason that our properties do so well and make so much money has nothing to do with me. It's all my wife and her design. 100%. Like, yes, we need the operations, but the reason that they get booked is because she has that eye.
Yeah.
So whether it's a spouse, whether it's a friend, whether you hire a designer, invest in that. It will be the best investment you make, because especially for you folks that are long-term traditional buy and hold investors, the biggest mindset shift that you have to make going from long-term to short-term is that with long-term, it's all about managing expenses and keeping them as low as possible to create that spread for yourself, because there's only so much you can really force the rents. Maybe you get an extra 50, 100, 150 a month, maybe per unit. With short-term, it's the opposite. Like the more that you put into it, the bigger spread you're going to have. So you got to have that mental shift to spend more up front, make it really stand out. And instead of getting $3,000 a month, you might get 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,000 a month because you made it stand out. So it's just a totally different mentality from the long-term versus the short-term.
Yeah, it's a quality in, quality out, right? And that's the difference in the mindset switch. If I could like put a label to what you were just talking about, is the fact that you got to put quality things in your vacation rentals to get the quality of money that you want out of it. And what's funny is that I'm going through this exact scenario with a client right now. So he bought the house, and then we suggested like working with a designer. They wanted to design it themselves, and now they were getting ready to launch. When they were like, the unit is done, the house is done. We went to walk it. There were certain corners that were cut that will hurt you long term, right? And that one of the things that I always talk about is like really going to a house and spend time in it when you think you're done, and spending the extra money. And when you look at also the people that perform very well, they have that luxury feeling in all of the pictures. And so don't skip out on that, but also don't buy. One of the things that I wasted a lot of money on when I first got started was trying to buy the cheapest things to go into the unit. So like the cheapest towels. So I would go to Target, and they would like the rooms to go collection at Target, or like the going back to school collection. I would buy all of the white towels, but they're just not made for that, right? So there is that element in investing in quality things for the longevity of the listing that long term is going to really make a difference.
100%. 100%. So if I had 100K, like I said, I'd look for a property around $500,000. Analyze the markets, go get the free starter pack and learn how to analyze AirDNA and analyze the numbers on the deals. Go for that second home loan at 10% down. It's 50 grand down plus closing costs. Say it's around 60. Then you got a $40,000 budget to do any little tweaks, upgrades, furnish it, make it really stand out. And that's exactly what I would do. If you do not have money right now, I would, if I had if I had nothing, but I had a credit card, I would literally go pay a coach, whether it's me or somebody else that you resonate with, and learn the business. And then I'd go out and start offering my services as a co-host. Like that's what I would do. And that's what I do for everything. Even when I got started, I didn't have money. Like I didn't. The little money that I had, I invested in coaches, and I was like, I need to learn this business from people that have done it at the level that I want to get to, and show me the road. Like, show me what my blind spots are. What am I not even thinking about right now?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, where are those blind spots?
Yeah.
And then I would start going out and co-hosting. And people are like, well, where do I find these deals? Like, where do I find these people? You need to start telling everybody what you do. Change up your social media profiles. Like, it should clearly state, hey, I'm a short-term rental operator. I help real estate investors maximize their profits through short-term rentals. Something along those lines, so that it is clear as day that when people come across your name, they associate you with short-term rentals. And you have to get comfortable putting yourself out there. And I see too many people, they're like, hey, how do I get these deals? And I'm like, who are you telling about this? And they're like, well, I'm not really talking about it. I'm like, well, that's the problem, man. This is free advertising.
Telling my mom and my wife, you know what I mean? Like they can't help you, right? And it's also like, just go out there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and a lot of people are like, I go to real estate events. Yes, real estate events are great because you find like-minded people. But also you have to network in other events, because if you just go to real estate events, you're going to be surrounded by other people that do the same thing, right? So like, just continue to network and do what Mike did when he first like decide to transition. Is you got to stop saying what it is that you do. Like, don't say it. I'm a professional vacation rental manager. That's all I do.
That's it. And like, if you do the math, right? Say you want to get to a 6-figure income. Okay. You need somewhere between 8 to 10 co-host deals, maybe less if you're doing bigger properties, but say you can average $1,000 a month as a co-host. Okay, cool. You need between 8 and 9 properties to make $100,000. It's not a lot. It's not a lot of properties to get to that point, but you got to put yourself out there and you got to know what the hell you're doing. Okay. This business is getting more and more popular, and there's a lot of people that are jumping into the game. And they're like, yeah, I'm just going to manage properties for people. Dude, ethically, if you were like a stockbroker investing somebody's 401k, you would have to go to school. You'd have to get a degree in finance. You'd have to pass all these other tests and get certified as a stockbroker and do all these things.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that in this industry yet. But ethically, if you don't know what you're doing, you should not be taking on somebody's property that they've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in and just saying, hey, I can make you money, and you don't know what you do. That's not ethical. Like, it's just not. So like, get educated first. Like, you're listening to the podcast. Great. That's a good baseline, but we can only go so deep in a 40-minute interview. You want to work with a coach or a program or something that will show you A to Z how to do this business. And then when deals come up, they're going to walk through the deals with you to make sure that they're good. And to make sure that you know what you're doing and you're not making mistakes with somebody else's money.
Yeah. Because also we can teach, like, no matter how much we talk about things, you don't have to dress, like, this is all a dress reversal, right? Like, you have to actually be in the moment where you have guests checking in and you have an issue going on, and you have to understand, like, what are your system and procedures, right? Like, the only way to create system and procedures is to go through the experiences and learn from them, right? I think also, Mike, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, which is obviously like arbitrage, right? Because like, if you have listened to the show for long enough, like, you know, arbitrage is out there, and it is an option. Doing arbitrage could be a way for you to get some experience with a property if you're not comfortable going out and reaching to people doing like, I want to be a co-host, and you don't have the money to put as a down payment on a house. You can always arbitrage. But again, I've done arbitrage at the beginning, and my intention was to always own them long term, right? But if you want to get something under your belt, and you are coming out of college, for example, right? And you have that like $10,000 to $20,000 in your bank account that you're like, okay, maybe I can furnish a 2-bedroom apartment and put first and last and security on a house. I would rather you do that first so that you get to experience something than you going out and starting co-hosting deals without have ever owned or run the property yourself. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. And if arbitrage is going to be your game, follow our good buddy TJ Chajani. Like that's his jam. And he owns a lot of property and he's doing hotel deals and all that stuff. But he started with arbitrage or a blend of arbitrage and ownership. And he's a whiz with that stuff. So if that's your jam, go talk to TJ. Like he's got a great program. I just spoke at his event. He's spoken at our events. He's a good friend of ours. He's your guy if you want to do arbitrage. If you're not familiar with arbitrage, you're basically going to go rent an apartment from somebody else. You pay to furnish it, and then you're essentially re-renting that as a short-term rental by the night. And then whatever difference is between what you made on Airbnb and the platforms versus what you pay the landlord and your utilities, that's your profit, right? So arbitrage deal, you're going to need somewhere between, I don't know, I was going to say 12.
15 to 20.
I was going to say 15 to 20. I was going to say
Yeah.
12, but I think that's too thin. I'd say between 15 to 20K to do an arbitrage deal.
Yeah.
Realistic.
Which is a lot easier to wrap your head around. And I think also there is that again, we talked about this on the show. Tristan talked about this on the show as well. There is the level of temperature that you're comfortable with, that it's going to rise over time, right? And so again, like just be comfortable with the money that you have. And there is no shame. Like there were times that I didn't have $20,000 to put together, you know what I mean, to like do it. But there is ways for you to do it. Again, if you're going like thinking creative, your family, the first avenue of like money that I was able to raise to do things came from my family. So just being able from friends, right? Having that conversation. Maybe you know somebody that has a vacation home. Maybe your family has a vacation home, right? We have had multiple people that came on the show that they got started by helping their parents make money from a vacation property. Again, guys, if you start talking about what you want to do and you start aligning your actions with what you're saying and you start looking around, there is opportunities, and there may be a vacation home in your life already that may not be yours specifically, but that you can have access to. That would be the perfect guinea pig for you to kind of get going, get started, and just learn, you know what I mean? Learn from experience.
And if you're sitting there and you're like, that's great, but I don't know anybody with property. My family's never had money. Like that's not an option. Okay, cool. Start going to local real estate meetups and figuring out who the players are in that space and start working for them for free and finding ways to add value to them for free. Like start doing that and just building up your network of real estate investors that are the real movers and shakers that are out there doing deals. They've gone through the ropes. They have the capital to do deals. They're building their business, and you just help them out for free because at the beginning, you don't know what you don't know. And go help them. Like find ways to add value to them. And then you can present this information to them over time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But it all starts with getting clear around like, first off, what is my goal? Like, what do I need to get to? Why am I starting this business? Am I trying to get to $5,000 a month, 10, 20, whatever my number is to get out of a job or just have some extra income for vacations or whatever it is? What is my goal? And then reverse engineering. All right, how many properties is that going to be? What markets am I going to be in? What types of clients do I want to serve? Because it's very different property by property and market by market, like this house versus some of my stuff in the Northeast that's catered more towards business travelers, completely different demographic. And it's going to totally dictate the type of properties that you're going for, the way that you design them, the rates that you're charging, the way that you price them and adjust your pricing based on how far in advance they're booking. It completely depends, but you want to get that whole game plan together. But I would start with, again, if you have the money, cool. Do either the arbitrage if you got a little bit of money, or if you've got more, cool. Go purchase a deal, see if there's any way to add value to that deal and hopefully refinance it, essentially burring your short-term rentals and rinsing and repeating that over time. And if not, just start building the service side of it as a co-host and scale it that way. right? And that's what E and I have done essentially over time. And now we get to own a bunch of real estate. But at the beginning, we didn't have the cash to do that. So we were, E was doing a mix of management and arbitrage at the beginning, building his cash flow. And then eventually, now he owns the whole complex and he still, owns some other stuff and he's managing a bunch of stuff. So,
And also knowing your skill set, right? I think like as you were talking, one of the things that came to mind is understanding that like your past experiences, especially if you're a handy person or like somebody that has been um that can do something with their hands, that is a great asset and that's a great value that you can bring one to an investor like me or Mike. But even if you go into the marketplace, right? Like become the handyman company for vacation rental owners for your market, right? Become the cleaning crew for vacation rental owners in your market, right? That way you start going into the conversation and you start seeing, kind of similar to what I was saying earlier with my background as a maintenance guy, you start seeing how the business operates. And then there's no better way for you to find deals because again, like if you're working with us in our environment, we share things that don't work with us that may work for somebody else, right? Like I give properties to people all the time that I'm like, this is not our fit. Do you guys want it? And I would do that for people that work on like with us all the time. Kind of similar to Julie's George kind of
yeah,
business model, right?
exactly. Exactly. The other thing to just think about, and again, it's going to depend on your goals, but how wide do you want to go? Right? I went really wide really fast. And if I was starting over, I would not have done that. I would have focused on dominating 1 to 2 markets like he did. Like he just dominated South Florida around like Boca. And then now he's expanded a little bit, but he's still basically in South Florida. Right.
Hmm.
So like he's owned that market. And I think it's a lot easier to scale and build your brand that way than trying to go super wide, super fast.
Yeah. And even me learning from what you were saying, Mike, is like even in my market, I was doing too many things. Right. I wasn't abundant enough to believe that I could do just vacation rentals. So I was doing vacation rental management. I was doing long-term rental management. I was doing association management. Right. And like even me, like a huge proponent of like mindset and thinking positive and like envisioning your life. I've done a lot of things in my life that now looking back, I can see that I wasn't thinking as abundantly as I should. And I wasn't like having just really like kind of trust and faith in the process, right? Just choose your niche. Also, because then people around you start understanding that that's who you are and that's what your business is. And then they start referring business to you because they're like, I don't know that guy, but every time I see him, he's the vacation rental guy. So if you're looking for one, I will go talk to him or her.
And then there was a stint for like 2 years where you went on a tear syndicating like apartment deals in the Midwest,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for better or worse, I mean, if you want to give the Cliff Notes version of all that.
On
But
the syndication.
yeah, I mean, like I don't think you necessarily regret it, but I also think it probably stinted your growth on the vacation rental side.
Yeah, it's unfortunately we all have a limited amount of energy that we give to people and or to things, right? And so even they are like putting so much energy into that apartment syndication and not knowing what I didn't know in that aspect as well. At the beginning, I was like, "Oh, this is awesome! I should transition my time away from vacation rentals into this because this is so much easier." Really what it was is just it wasn't as far along, so I didn't see as many hiccups as I knew were in vacation rentals just because I've been doing it for longer, right? And it just wasn't in long-term alignment with me, right? So even now I'm finding myself having to like fix up and clean up the situation. Luckily, it ended up going well because we had good business fundamentals in like how we were looking at property, how we were underwriting property, how we were analyzing properties that we bought right. So even the adjustments that did have to happen did not hurt us as bad. But how far would I be if I just had stayed in vacation rentals exclusively over all these years?
Yeah.
And I'm not any wealthier also, right? Like it isn't like the opportunities in the teachings when I compare them to the opportunity cost of what actually happened and what I could have done, maybe I would have been way better off without having gone through the whole process, right? But again, there
Well,
was a huge ego element as well.
and I think the only reason I bring that up is because when a lot of people, they reach out to me, or I'll do interviews for the mastermind group, and they'll tell me about all these side hustles that they have going on. So they've got the full-time job, and then they're like, yeah, and I'm building this Amazon e-com store, and I'm side hustling doing this, and I want to start this short-term rental business. And I'm like, that's a wrong approach. Like, there's massive power and focus. My life changed when I cut out all the other little side hustles and I went all in on one thing with laser focus. And that's when things took off. So if you've got a bunch of other stuff going on, you need to make a decision. Unless you've fully delegated that to somebody else, do you want to pursue the Amazon thing or this other side hustle, or are you going to go all in on the short-term rentals? Because once you start deviating your focus, especially if you have a job and a family and everything else, like he said, it's not even the time. It's just the mental focus. If you deviate that too much, you're not going to move the needle. Because if you're like, oh, I got to figure out which products I'm going to sell on my Amazon store, and then I'm going to switch gears and figure out what markets I'm going to go in, and then I'm going to switch gears and figure out which properties I'm going to go for, whatever.
Yeah.
There's not enough focus and clarity for yourself.
Yeah.
So just, if you're going to do this, go all in for, a year to 2 years, get this thing dialed in, and then delegate it. And then if you want to do something else, fine. But focus. And I got that advice from our buddy Matty A years ago. And he was like, dude, you're a smart guy, but like, you got to focus and pick one thing and go all in.
Yeah.
You're trying to do too much at once.
Yeah. And also because like the other side effect of that is that you're going to feel exhausted because you are doing a lot of things, but then there is no reward because you're not doing anything long enough. So it's almost like you're racing in a like multiple like kind of discipline race, but you take 3 step on your like 5K and then you take off your shoes and then you go shoot one arrow and then you just go do something else and you just never allowing yourself to progress, but you always are under so much pressure because you have so many things to do, because you have so many businesses that you go in doing things for, but you never get out of that, like that being busy for being effective. Like, so you're just busy and you're busy bee, but like the business, it's not growing. You're just busy and you're tired. And then you're like, nothing ever works. I don't understand why nothing ever works. It's because 1, you're not giving it that right amount of time. And 2 is because you have leaks everywhere because you're wasting the rest of your energy doing hundreds of other things that you shouldn't be doing.
Exactly.
This is a great reminder for myself too.
Exactly. It says, so again, to kind of put a bow on all this. So again, if we were starting over right now,
yeah,
that's what we would do. Again, if we had, say, the 100 grand, I'd go out, figure out what markets I want to be in. What is my goal? Say it's 10 grand a month. And okay, I've got 100 grand to invest. I need to make at least $25,000 a year on that 100K. That's 2 grand a month. So that means I need 5 deals. So it's like, okay, if I'm going to get to 5 deals, all right, I want to find a deal that I'm confident within a year and a half will appreciate through some renovation or whatever I'm going to be able to do to this property, so that I can go back to the lender, pull that 50 grand out or 100 grand out, and then go do another deal and then another deal. And so it might take a little bit longer to go that route. If I was starting over and I had the 100, I would buy the first deal and then I would start co-hosting in that market for other people to accelerate my cash flow, which is exactly what I did. I bought my first deal, and then for the next, I don't know, up till 30 something deals, I didn't buy anything else. I just accelerated cash flow through that service of co-hosting. And then I got to the point where I could start buying stuff again. So I would do a blend. If I was in a rush to get out of a job or do whatever and create freedom and I had some cash, that's what I would do. I would look to purchase a property in a market that I wanted to set up shop in. I'd have proof of concept through my own money. Then I'd be offering that service. If I didn't have money, I'd be investing in more education. Either way, I'd be investing in education. But if I had very little, the first investment I would make is the education. And then I would be looking to offer my services and scale it up that way. But the thought process is the same. What is my goal? What market am I going to be in? How am I going to dominate that market? And then if I had the money, I would invest it in that market with some education. And then I'd be scaling it up with co-hosting. I didn't have the money, I'd be investing in education on a credit card, and then I'd be looking to pay that investment off within 12 months and start to accelerate my earnings that way.
Yeah. And what Matty talks about, and it's funny you brought him up because I coach with Matty. So, and going back to investing in people to make you better. He adds one of the things that he talks about all the time is the crockpot mentality versus the microwave mentality. And guys, there is no other way of saying it. Like if I was going back from the beginning, everything Mike said, it's good because it's the practical and the real thing of it. But one of the biggest things for me was like just changing and just falling in love with the process and falling in love with the just some flavors take time to build. Like there's no other way of saying it, right? Life needs time. And like it doesn't matter how much intention you have behind it. There's a natural thing that happens with time that you can't overwrite. Like you can't expedite. There is nothing you can do. So you got to just fall in love with it, because if you keep going from thing to thing just to escape the natural movement of time in a way, you're just going to find yourself waiting for the rest of your life, because you don't allow time to happen for the things that you want to actually come through.
That's it, man. You got to plant those seeds and you got to water them every single day. And they grow. Like it's the analogy of life. So hopefully you guys got some value out of this episode. Let us know down in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube or on any of the podcasting platforms. What is your goal and what strategy are you going to implement? And again, check out my bio on Instagram. It's at the Airbnb guy. There's no underscore after it. There's some scammer out there that duplicated my account that's trying to sell you on some crypto shit. That's not me. So report that person. So
Mike and I would never approach you with any crypto things. That's for sure.
Yeah. There's no chance I'm asking anybody for money on Instagram.
Yeah.
So,
but hey, that's also a good sign that you have people that are jealous enough or low life enough to do that. And what's funny is all of our friends, like you're all going through it. So I don't know what's happening, but it's been Noble, it's been Kyle, it's been TJ, it's been you now. And it's just like going back to energy, right? Like I wish those people would put their energy in actually doing something that it's good versus just trying to hustle people and scam people, you know?
If they put as much time into actually building a legitimate business as they did as trying to fraud people under a false account with my face on it,
that's what I mean, right?
Pretty successful.
Yeah, it can be easy, right? Like you can't, like it's genuinely time. And like also criminals, right? They're always thinking about the next hustle. I'm like, just put all that into a normal thing, like just a normal sustainable business that you don't have to create a new hustle every 12 months. Because the shit you've been doing, it's illegal. Just to, you know, do something good. And then you can just keep doing it for the rest of your life.
That's it. So anyway, check out the free starter pack on my Instagram bio. If you scroll down, there's a bunch of links in there, but there's one that says like the free starter pack, and that'll have all the market analysis and the free deal analyzer and all that good stuff. So I just want to make sure that you guys don't get into bad deals. Obviously, if you want to work with me, cool, you can apply to the mastermind. But at a minimum, go get the free stuff, because I just don't want to see you guys getting bad deals. So that's it for this episode. For those of you that are coming to Miami, I can't wait to hang out with you and E and all of our buddies down there. It's going to be a blast. And that's it, guys. Hope you're having an awesome week, and we will see you guys next week. Hey, STR Nation, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. And in the comments, let us know what topics you want us to cover on upcoming episodes, and we'll make sure to get that in the books for you. And if you really want to learn how to launch, automate, and scale your short-term rental business, if you want to go deeper, then check out our free masterclass at strsecrets.com.